Okay, welcome back. Now we're at lecture 10 and we're going to push forward now and we're going to make our buildings look more lifelike, more building-like, more specific. Have some fun with it. Make your structures look more believable as buildings. So now I've got 25 buildings in my composition like you should have at this point in time. They should be in different positions than yours or yours to mine because I wanted you to experience doing some of that or a lot of this now on your own. So what I'm going to do now is start to draw and start to design, you know, a more building look for our structures and throw some shadow and some more detail on them. Maybe we'll work on the park here a little bit in the side of beyond our streets here. This is going to be a cliff with a waterfall. Again, I know it wouldn't be natural to have that next to a city, but you know, again, it's our drawing. And then over here we'll have a little space where we can do some things with just the street, etc. So I'm going to do some work on the buildings. I'm not going to go through every one of them for you, but I'll get enough where you can get a feel for it, because my goal is for you to get comfortable with it, see this lecture, maybe 15, 20 minutes, however long it takes, and then leave off, and then I might come back and show you the end of my finished drawing right towards the end, so you see how I finish it out as well. So remember, as we're starting here, we'll do a couple, or I'll do a couple, you can just watch, is that everything that we do to make sure that our perspective is correct in our composition, so that we're always going to a left vanishing point, to a right vanishing point, and also to the vertical vanishing point. You probably can't see them anymore in my drawing because I wanted to get the camera up closer. So I'll start off with this bigger building here, and I'm going to think a little deeper now about structures and awnings and things that I want, so I might draw a little bit in the green and then maybe go back in the black, or maybe a lighter color. Maybe the red. Red is still best for this, so you can see it. Keep it pretty light. So everything I do is going to be in perspective. Now, with buildings, the tops of buildings have a little space where there's a little indentation. Not always, but in this case, I'm gonna keep it like that. So I'm going to go back to the vertical vanishing point, and then go back to the right vanishing point here, and then the left vanishing point over here as I line them up. And that gives me now a little structured top right in through there. And a lot of times with buildings that have antenna that come up out of the vertical vanishing point, radio antenna, telecommunications, and I'm kind of just shorthanding what that looks like. Maybe something like in through here. Maybe another one has a kind of a tower feel to it, like so. Air conditioning unit, so I might put some little slats or lines for planes of just walking across the surface. Have you ever been on the top of a building? A lot of times what they have is these flat roofs that are membrane roofs to seal the rain, and they have gravel up there. When I used to work in construction in Manhattan before I went to grad school, I was on some top of these skyscrapers, and you get some obviously great views, but you get, you know, really cool looking structures up there as well. So I might draw what's going to look like in perspective, sort of like an air conditioning vent or unit. And I'm always lining up my ruler to the vanishing points. You may not be able to see them, but that's what I'm doing. I'm lining them up right in that direction. So, and then inside that might be a little kind of a circular unit inside there. Let me darken it up so you can see it further. Take my darker marker here and here. So I'm just putting material on top of my building. Each building will have something up there. You could put swimming pools. I've seen that before in buildings and clubs, in restaurants and bars and things like that. What I would consider you do is to go online and go on Google Maps and research buildings and look for cool things that are on top of buildings. So now I'll outline some of my antenna, my telecommunications antennas here. They've got little crossbars and beams. and maybe there's going to be some more awnings out into here. Whatever you do, keep your drawing tight and correct in perspective. Maybe there's another kind of pyramid tower over here, something like that, etc. and so on. Okay, so we've got that. And now I'll start working on our buildings. Probably what you don't want to do is draw every single window. So what we're doing today is learning how to shorthand our drawing a little bit in terms of how to get it that building look without drawing every single component. So it's a shorthand. Think of it in shorthand. So I'm going to find the center of my plane and shadow here by drawing a crossing X in red. It's kind of hard to see. That one's done. That marker's out, so let's go for another one here. Maybe you can see this one a little bit better. So I'll draw a light crossing X. Yeah, that's better. Right into here. So there's my center. So I might draw through there another support building awning structure. A lot of modernist buildings, what gives them their glassy look is that the structure, the interior structure, is iron beams, etc. And so that's really solid. So you can put almost anything you want on the outside shell of a modernist building, like glass or plastic or mirrors, and they stand up to the weight. Older buildings, because the structures were built kind of from the outside in, all the weight's on the outside, so you couldn't quite do that for support. So I've got maybe that, and then I'll take maybe the center here and put maybe a support beam across there. So I could do something like that. Keep it simple. I might have a strong awning here and a strong awning that goes across in perspective. I got to go back to the left vanishing point. Everything I do, I'm doing to make my structure look more interesting, yeah, but I'm always going either to the vertical vanishing point or the left or right vanishing point, always. Will never change. So maybe I'll put a couple little sketchy or quick lines to make it look like there's reflection or something. So here's where I'm just kind of making it shorthand look like a bunch of buildings. So you might ask, okay, what is the height of the building? Well, I'm going to say this one, just in my mental capacity. This is about maybe 50, 60 stories. Let's say 60 stories. And so you can always figure the heights out of all your other buildings. If this is human scale at 60 stories, you just project your width and depth back here to these from this building, and you see which ones are taller than or shorter than that one. So that's going to make this building very, very big, and as we're looking down, it gets very, very small. As a matter of fact, as I come down here, I might put a line here for like the awning of an entrance, and the entrances might be one entrance to the building here, another one down here, another one over there. Very tiny little dots and dashes to make it look very, very small. So some of you will get this right away, and others it will be a little bit more difficult. You've got to make the depth and dimension feel like it is much larger as it comes up higher towards our viewpoint, and as we move down below, it gets much, much further and further away. Same thing moving way back to the right or to the left as well. So I'll bring this across, this little awning here. Now I may bring the center point here. I'll just kind of guesstimate it at this one. I'll bring a little center line here and here. Okay, maybe I'll make this awning thick, something like that. Cut a couple of streak lines for reflections, because you don't want to draw every window. We're still far enough away we can't see every single detail. We don't want that. That would drive you absolutely bonkers and insane. So maybe this one have a thicker support beam up here. Put that on there. Okay. So now, since you're working on white paper and you don't have a darker toned or lighter toned pencil, you can do your shading in darker tones. And then for me, since I have brown toned paper, or if I give you brown tone paper for this assignment, then you can just follow along with light. But since our light source is over here, shining down on the building, I'm going to start thinking about, okay, where are the lightest parts? Well, back here would catch a lot of light through. You know, part of the antennae, that's plural, I forget, would catch a little bit of light, maybe some highlights. on some of the antenna structures. Maybe this tower would catch a little bit of light through there. And then the front facade of our air conditioning unit up above, maybe a little bit of light on the platform, not all over, maybe slightly in the top, in through there to give it more of a realistic looking view. Now the side unit area would be more in shadow. So when we think in 1, 2, 3 step planes, that will be consistent for almost all of our building, no matter what position it is in terms of where it relates to light. We're always looking for light plane, medium plane, and then darker plane on top of that. Okay, so now work with the side of the building in through here. Maybe start to add a little bit of light through here because it's coming from top left, so maybe the left plane is not quite so bright in light as the very, very top of our building. So I might put some highlights here. Across. Notice how I can use my ruler in this little piece, this blunt piece of pastel or chalk to help me with that. And then I'll start to put some more kind of reflective streaks on the building. Maybe the center awning is going to be a little bit lighter and thicker. Later on I have some shadow. But I'm just trying to shorthand the look and feel. And everything I do goes back to, again, vertical vanishing point for the right and left. No matter if it's more sketchy or if it's a little bit more concrete and more technical. Whatever you do, you've got to obey the laws of perspective. Otherwise it won't look correct. And we want your drawing to look correct. Now, we're not going to do cast shadows on this drawing. That'll be another time in another lecture, because that would affect the shadow coming out here. In all of the buildings, cast shadows might be reflected on each building. We don't want to do that for now. We'll keep it simple since we're in basic, or this could be an intermediate lecture too. We'll keep that a little bit more simple, but do know that there are cast shadows. But that's a lecture for properties of light and value. So I might add some darker areas just for shadow effect, give it more 3D effect in just certain areas, picking up, darken up some lines where I think I might need them. And that's about it. Now I might add a little bit of reflective light in my shadow area. I'll show you that. The shadow area of my building. What does that look like? Well, we can come back here and lighten this plane up a little bit. We never want to make this plane, any reflected light, lighter than any lighter value on the light side. Why? Because it's not having direct light. Otherwise, it would feel like we had a secondary light source. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to come back here and maybe just put a few little glistening lines over here, and I have to be very careful. So they just want to look like there's a little reflected light going on, a little reflection in my drawing. And this holds true whether you're painting in oil or acrylic or watercolor or gouache, which are great for these studies. Okay, so it gives a little bit of light over reflected light. It just gives it a little bit more dimension, which is what you want for sure. Through here. So I might bring up these edges and this edge to make it look kind of interesting. Through here, just to jazz it up, make it look more building-like. Whatever you can do to make it look more building-like, go for it. Let's see how cool you can. You can put billboards later on in your buildings, etc., and so on. I could add maybe a little bit more crossing detail. Just make sure that you're going back to your appropriate vanishing points. And a lot of times you'll see convergence lines in other parts of your drawing that you can kind of just use as a guide, since I'm using a shorter ruler. But whatever you do, make sure you're going back and you're hitting your vanishing points concretely. Can't emphasize that enough. Probably said that a bunch already. All right, so we got a pretty good building, I think, going there. All right, let's do another one. I'll do one in the middle ground. Let's work with that pyramid building. We'll make it look hopefully a little bit more attractive instead of just kind of a blunt pyramid. All right, so what we can do to it, well, I'm just going to make up things on my own. I think I'll start by finding, the center of this thing in through here. And so, how do you find the center? Well, if you look inside there, I did a crossing X. It's kind of hard to do a crossing X in this plane. So I have the inside already done for me. Then I can come out and just align my ruler to my vanishing point, and there's my center right there. So I'll draw my center down so I can make that into different planes. And of course there's one on the other side that I can line up to. So I use the bottom plane for that one there and there. So there's my centers that I can use. So that's going to help. And then I might add some maybe side slats to it like that and like that. Maybe they extend a little further out so they create kind of an edge in through here. Kind of like that if I wanted. Again, just making it up. So I've got that. Maybe I'll put some more out here and I'll sketch them through. Just remember that I'm thinking about perspective and where my vanishing points are so I can work with my depth and dimension. I've got to have that. Can't say that enough. So maybe I've got a couple of rings there. Where are good reference materials to look for cool buildings? Well, if I've done enough of these, I'll just wing it out of my head. But if I was a student, I'd look at obviously Manhattan. Chicago is a very close city that some of you have been to already. London would be great. San Francisco, the Transamerica building, this pyramid building is good for that. What about, Paris is not a great city for that, but if you want some old looking buildings, look at Paris, for instance, Tokyo, Hong Kong for skyscrapers. So I kind of conceive this as a more urban, Manhattan landscape, but you could do all different types or styles of buildings if you want to. So keep that in mind. Singapore might be a great addition to as well, so keep that in mind. All right, so I'm continuing on here with my drawing, making nice, these kind of, maybe these are like viewing platforms, observation decks. I don't know, I'm just winging it now. Have fun with it. This is the fun part. You've done all that hard work in your drawing to get it technically accurate and win the day with the rest of your drawing. Make sure that you're using your creative intellect in your brain. Creativity and intellect go together. You don't want to be a dumb artist, which you're not. All right, so we've got those platforms. Maybe I'll sketch it a little bit quicker so you can see it. I can be a little bit looser here. So I've got these little platforms. So I'm thinking these as maybe observational decks. I don't know if we'd see too many people on them this far away, but we might. I can add them later when I add people down closer to the ground down in through here. And we'll talk about that later on, strategies for adding people, which are probably going to be no more than dots or dashes, because remember, we're pretty high up. If this is a 60-story building and we've still got our horizon line, our eye level here, we're pretty high up above these buildings, at least high enough to fly over, thank goodness. We don't want to get too close where we crash into one of them. That would not be good. All right, so maybe part of this building over here, maybe this part underneath is going to be glass, so I can kind of see through it. So I'm going to draw through this a little bit. Maybe it's got like a big, humongous water fountain in the middle of it. And I'm just going to put some dots and dashes for like architectural things that might be inside, viewing platforms or couches or lounging areas. Who knows what this could be, like a hotel, etc. and so on. It's kind of space agey looking a little bit. And maybe some linear dashes for window planes up here. They could be mirror-like. There we go. Something like that. Okay, let's add some light to it. And light and shadow. So I'll put some shadows underneath. Add shadows into here. There. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to put some light on our building and reflection on our building. So this feels, you know, more, maybe it's more opaque over through here. So maybe these are right in through here. It's a little lighter. Like so. And then down here, this would be all glass. We kind of see through this more like reflection. So I'm going to make that feel like it's a little bit more reflective. And through there. And then we might get a little reflective light moving across our image here. Like so. So just remember that the tops of the buildings, your eye or your audience's eye is a little closer to than the bottom. So the bottom will be a little bit less detailed, where the top will be a little bit more detailed. So I could come back to this building and demonstrate that a little further by maybe putting some more detail in the awnings across, maybe making some cross lines. Like so, just to give a little bit more detail up here, and then again, less and less detail down below. And these buildings are substantially far away that they'll all be about the same detail level, maybe just a little bit slightly more detailed up. Maybe it's got a little antenna up at the top, a little reflective light in the ends, and you can just make up stuff. Again, do your research. Go online and find some cool buildings that you like and recreate them. Don't be afraid to do anything you want, space age, etc. and so on. Whatever you do, make sure that you're obeying the laws of perspective by using your vanishing points. Be clear on that. Okay. All right. So I think what I'll do now is work on the park a little bit. So I'm giving you bits and pieces of things, and then I'll do a little bit more with this park. And I'm going to leave you off, and then when we come back for lecture 11, you'll see most of my drawing finished, and then we'll add just a few bits and pieces down here. So I'll work the park, then we'll leave off, and you'll want to recreate and finish your drawing for the buildings in the park, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about little things outside on the edges. Okay, so with the park kind of abuts up to the buildings. Now we'll probably make like a walkway and some concrete edges around. So here's my park in through here. Now you know I've got a couple of buildings in through here, and so you see the park right in through there. I left that so you can see little nooks and things for negative space, and here's the other part of the park right in through there, and here's the other part of the park right in through there. So that's kind of where that is now. And I think what I'll do is I'll sketch and put a little extra space in between there. So that's like a big walkway where people can walk along the garden and the edges here. So I have that. I can't see through that there. Then maybe a little bit over here. It's probably a little bit wider in viewpoint than there. And then right up in through here. Just going back and following perspective. So we got, a walkway around it, something we can see through. Now, these little drawings in here, I'm kind of calling these little lakes or like ponds. And so I know they're kind of organic looking. And so, we're drawing kind of from above. So this is one little lake. Here I'll darken it. I'll kind of hatch that in just a little bit so you see it for now. You can just keep your sketch light until you figure out what you want. This lake is over here. So I've got another lake kind of laying flatter down on the surface of the ground, maybe in through here. And then out here in the middle is kind of like an island. And I can kind of conceive of that like as a big waterfall or a fountain area, so that might be really huge. And maybe there's a walkway where people could get out to it. So I'll kind of make that one, and then maybe put one over here. And then these walkways don't have to obey the laws of perspective because they can be in different angles. So I'm just going to make that up, make them really small. So there would be like a fountain here. We wouldn't see a lot of detail from this distance, but you just want to get the idea that there's this structure, and I'll put some kind of dots and dashes and hatching marks for my lake or pond, whichever you prefer, running through here. I'll keep the island a little bit more simple. So we have that now. Now, what about trees? Well, from a distance, trees can look pretty simple. They might look, if I have a little piece of scratch paper where you can see it. So from a good far away, keep your tree simple. Maybe like for like an orchard tree or a full tree, maybe almost like a circle with a little stem like that. Or if you want like a taller, longer cypress, maybe just kind of like a cone with a stem for the trunk, etc. Don't get into a lot of detail because you're pretty far away. Now, I'll draw an arrow to the bark or the trunk of the tree, and also the direction of the top where the leaves are. Whatever you do in perspective, that trunk will come out of the vertical vanishing point way down below. It will come out, that will set its direction. So if it's kind of tilted, then your tree will be tilted like that, okay, at an angle. If I darken that in. So that's all you want. You want to keep it into a shape. Just keep that in mind. So two simple, shapes and then your trunk. So what does that mean? Like if I put a row of trees along here, along my park and out and through here, I've got to be really careful. Everything comes out of that vertical vanishing point. So all my tree trunks, like if I start here maybe by the lake, I'll put some tree trunks out here. So I might set in some trunks first, just along this way. And they look very tiny little lines, but that's the direction, the vertical direction up in space of the actual trunk. And then about the size of my trees, only about, they're kind of like little circles or little dash circles, only about that big. You don't want them really big. So you have to learn as you're sketching, both technically and also intuitively, the appropriate size for the relationship between elements of your drawing to one another in perspective and depth. If I drew a tree like this big in my head, if I'm kind of where I'm like close to the building, well, that tree is going to be a monster size. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to put more trees out here. I'm just keeping in mind where my verticals are, and you can fill up that park with lots of trees, different sizes and shapes, dots and dashes, and later on they just become kind of sketch symbols. You learn that in art, especially when you deal with scale and size, that sketching, later on you learn how to shorthand symbols and dashes, and they become in place of really complex objects, but they're just far away. So that'll give you an idea on trees, etc., and so on. So you could have a lot of bushes and trees. And you could have trees on the streets here and there, little oasis of green areas that you want, etc., and so on. So that gives you that kind of organic kind of feel too as well. So we don't want to get too large with our tree structures. Now, I've got a tree here in the middle ground. If I brought it forward and put a tree maybe, somewhere over here, let's say I put a tree, maybe a couple of trees running through here. So the first thing I would do is get my stem or my bark, and it's going to be a little bit larger than these trees. Why? Because it's a little bit closer, but not too substantially so. Maybe it will be like about that size. Maybe there's a couple of trees in a bush in through here, little dots and dashes, and that's what tree would look like. Because people are going to be next to it, and they're going to be even smaller, maybe like a person over here. So people will be just a dot, maybe just a line for the quality of their body. Keep that pretty simple. So if I threw a little light on the trees, maybe just not even doing much of a highlight, just a little light to show that there's some flora and fauna, etc., and so on the trees, and maybe on the concrete, maybe a little reflection on the lake, and the fountain here in the middle. Keep it very simple. So go do your research, go do your photo research, have fun with this. And when you come back, I want you to have all of your buildings finished, like I will. And then we will work on the left side, the right side. We'll put a waterfall here, like Niagara Falls or something. And then, you know, what do you want to do with your background? Mountains, etc. and so on, or you just let it fade off, etc. Okay, so that's the next step as we move on to lecture 11. So finish this out, finish your buildings, have fun with it, put billboards on it, put all kinds of cool awnings, statues. You can put swimming pools on top of here, glass bubbles. Go nuts. Keep it in solid perspective, but have fun with it. Enjoy it, and hope you learn something from it and get something out of it. Okay? If you have any questions, you know where to reach me. Just email me, and I'll see you next time. Okay? Bye-bye.